Police say those who planned the Paris and Brussels terror attacks had information on suicide bombings, shootings and even chemical drone strikes against England football fans in Marseille when England play Russia at Euro 2016. The plans seem to target England supporters for the June 11th match, continuing the militancy campaign.
UK government sources said what they might attempt outside of the secure zones is what worries us most. Photos and references to Marseille's historic old port, where England fans will gather shortly for England's first opening game, were found in a laptop in Brussels, suggesting a plot to kill fans using AK-47s, suicide bombs and drones. Thousands of England fans will flood this area outside the so-called fan zone. France is still on maximum terror alert after the Paris attacks in November 2015.
Has bombing Syria made Britons less safe? Can't European intelligence protect civilians? And if an attack happens, is the British government's Syrian policy to blame? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. Now, police say ISIL is plotting to use suicide bombers, guns and even drones carrying chemical weapons to attack England football fans in France at Euro 2016. Is ISIL succeeding in Europe? We asked the public.
Not spreading the terror itself, but spreading the fear of the terror. Because the atmosphere in Paris is very tense. Well, notwithstanding the strike, but with Euro 2016 coming, the atmosphere is kind of nervous. We are kind of nervous still.
No, because the Euros are still going on. The people are still going, the teams are still going, the fans are still going, so no, I don't think they have.
To be honest, I don't actually know much about it. I know about the terrorists and about ISIS coming in, but with regards to the football, football brings everyone together. So in theory, it should cool it down, like stop it.
I think to a fashion that they are, but I think there seems to be a bit more. I think people are quite aware of it, whereas before we had other incidents. I think now they're kind of a bit more together in trying to kind of quash what they're trying to achieve as regards terrorism in Europe.
Yeah, there will always be a threat with these sort of big events, I think. Anyone, whether it's ISIL, another group, there will always be a threat with terrorism. Obviously, they're attracted to the big events, sort of something that can shock the public. I don't think they're winning, but if they're losing, that's the time when they will strike, I think. Yeah.
Given the concern about attacks against England fans at the football matches in France, do our experts assess ISIL's efforts as essentially successful?
Well, there's no question about it that the threat from ISIS is credible and it is severe. And what we need to keep on relaying to people, not just in Europe, but in the wider world, is that the threat posed by ISIS has ultimately stemmed from the American-led invasion and occupation of Iraq. And today, in 2016, ISIS has taken over from Al-Qaeda as constituting the most formidable threat to European security. So the attacks in Paris, the attacks in Brussels, and of course the presence, the lethal presence of ISIS in large parts of Syria, large parts of Iraq, and also in large parts of Libya, is a daily reminder to ordinary people across Europe that ISIS is now a part of their everyday lives, and people across Europe need to be reminded that that threat is because of Western foreign policy.
So it's not ISIL who are succeeding in Europe, it's the whole extremism that's succeeding in Europe. We are seeing the extremism from the far right. Today, as a matter of fact, a Frenchman was arrested for planning 15 terror attacks in France, on synagogues and mosques. It's not only ISIL, it's the extremism that's taking over in Europe between those Islamists and the extreme other end, and the people in the middle are the ones who are suffering a change to their lifestyle and to their safety due to that born.
Britain supported militants in Syria, many of whom are now ISIL militants. If terror attacks killed football fans in France, how much would the public blame the British government for recklessly supporting militants in Syria?
I think there will be temptation to blame the government, yes, because that is the nearest person to blame of your who rules your establishment, as it were. And they're the people who are supposed to be looking after you, I guess. So we're always looking for someone with answers and for someone to blame, I guess. So yes, I do think there will be temptation to blame the government. Me personally, I think it's not solely the government's responsibility to protect us. I think we as people need to all stand together and do that as one.
I think people more hold the government to account for actions earlier on, like, you know, destabilising Iraq, which has led to instability and has allowed these kind of organisations to rise.
Yes, I think so. One, they will be blamed because they, believe that we have enough problems here than putting our noses in other countries' problems. And two, I'm sure there is a better, solution. Wouldn't it be a talk situation rather than arms?
I don't think so. I think people are, those kind of groups kind of have targets in mind, and I don't think what the government are doing here or any other governments for that matter will affect that.
Do you know what? I think it will be Britain's fault, but I don't think people will blame Britain, to be honest. But I personally do feel like it is Britain's fault for stepping in. I don't think they should have done that because obviously it's put us at risk. But I don't think they thought about that when they done that, to be honest.
Do our experts feel British support for militants in Syria would be responsible if fatal attacks occur against football fans in France?
Should there be an ISIS terrorist attack in Britain? Should English football fans be targeted in Euro 16 by ISIS? Well, ultimately, the British government would be responsible because the British government has been providing weapons to the terrorists in Syria. They've been providing money. They've been providing logistical assistance. They've been providing intelligence. So if you keep on building up a group as potent, as repugnant as ISIS is, little surprise, little wonder that there is going to be blowback. So let's hope that there is no terrorist attack at Euro 2016. But if there is, we really have got to get to the roots of it.
There is a part of blame that goes to the British government for their position and their stand in what's happening in Syria, but it's not, the complete blame is not on them. I would blame them not for supporting the militants, but for not doing enough to end this in terms of practicing a bigger international role in pressing their allies into making steps towards solving this, into accepting and helping the refugees more than what they're doing now, into trying to ease the humanitarian situation in Syria, and mainly into actually getting the strong allies of Britain like USA, like Turkey, like France, who are main players in the conflict in the Middle East, to change their ways of handling this issue, because the extremism and the threat to Europe is increasing by the minute due to the situation there, and I think we should start by solving it there.
British security chiefs say ISIL may try to gun down England supporters at bars outside the official fan zone. Why can't European intelligence authorities protect civilians? Here's the public's view.
Because it's impossible probably to follow every possible suspect, right? So I believe there's just not enough resources and also not enough probably information regarding who may or who may not be terrorists. So I think that they will need lots of resources, and I'm not really sure what kind of powers they have in terms of if they can just follow somebody or if they can preemptively detain someone.
That sounds funny, but I don't think it's particularly in their interest to. I think the idea of fear and more money towards arms and more money towards whoever's funding these things and making the profits from these things, I think that's the real issue. and it's a small group of politicians and world bankers who really control what's going on with these wars. I think the regular Joes walking the street, really, we just suffer the fallout.
But I don't think anybody can guarantee something like that unless they got a crystal ball. But I think all security are in place. They are very alert. I heard that they just arrested a French man in Ukraine, hoping to plot 16 attacks during the game. So we can just hope. This is all we can do, and make sure that all intelligence are in connection and listen to each other.
You can't do it. You can't vet every single body. Look at the IRA. You know, did we know they were coming over from Ireland? Did we know where they were? I mean, somebody must know who these people are, but you can't protect everybody 100%. There's no guarantees in life.
What do our experts see as the problems facing the European authorities in protecting England supporters in and around the Euro football matches?
We all know that, there are no borders within the European Union. There are no passport controls within the European Union. And of course, that is a grave weakness for European security. Conversely, it's a significant advantage to ISIS, because ISIS, its people, can move pretty much freely across the entire European Union without going through checkpoints at the borders. There's no border crossings. So the intelligence agencies in Europe really are under pressure, because they don't know who's coming into their countries, they don't know who are leaving their countries, they don't know what these people who are coming into their countries are doing.
That's a very important question, and the problem is it's hard to protect people from a danger that's coming from within. Those people who are practicing those attacks in Europe and in France and Belgium and in all these European countries are homegrown people. They didn't sneak from a border, they didn't smuggle their weapons, they were born and bred in those countries, they were fed an extreme view of the things. They were brainwashed by their scholars, by the people that they look up to, but they didn't come from outside, hence, which makes the security issue very hard for those countries, for France, for Belgium, to secure them, because they don't know where they're coming from. However, I think France are doing a very good job in trying to secure the Euros 2012. I think the fan zone is an area where there'll be a lot of focus and a lot of security measures. Other cities in France seem to be, according to the head of police in France, chief of police, that they're all 100% secure and they know everything. I think there'll be a small concentration into the fan zone in Paris, and I think the European police and the French police are capable of securing the period of the Euro 2016.
Hundreds who have returned to Britain from Syria and Iraq, having fought alongside ISIL, still haven't been prosecuted. Do the public feel British authorities really are determined to stop terrorism?
I wasn't aware of that. I think they should be prosecuted, because then it will stop them from doing it again. I don't know why they're not prosecuting it. Maybe they haven't got enough information. Maybe they're not fully on board with what's going on. There could be loads of reasons.
No, I think that's maybe a loaded statement in the fact that, of course, we can't try everyone because we don't know. That as a statistic is incredibly black and white, where I think this argument is incredibly colourful. So while I appreciate the fact that the statistic shows that we're not doing enough, I think it's misleading.
I didn't know that was the case, and I feel like if they are found guilty of such charges, they should be prosecuted, so I didn't know that was the case.
The fact that we're welcoming to all sorts. I'm an immigrant myself, so it is a country or Europe is, an area which is welcoming to all migrants. I think it's very difficult to work out which one is a terrorist and which one isn't.
regardless, whatever the government wants to do, the government will do. If they wanted to prosecute them, they would have. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like, I just proper feel like, yeah, the British government will do what the British government wants to do, regardless. So if they don't want to prosecute them, they ain't going to prosecute them.
I didn't know that either. Like, you know, I'm surprised with that figure, to be honest. I could understand maybe they let some of them run around just to kind of maybe see who they're talking to and gather information that way.
Given the low level of prosecutions of returning militants from Syria and Iraq back to the UK, do our experts feel British authorities really are committed to stopping terrorism?
I think on the one hand, MI5 and the British police, they certainly want to stop any terrorist attack from occurring. They certainly want to apprehend and arrest a potential terrorist. There's no question about that, because the British government, whatever the political persuasion, Conservative or Labour, they do not want a terrorist attack on their hands. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, I think it's plausible to argue that should some of these terrorists in Britain who left Britain to fight in Syria and now back, it's plausible to argue that they could reveal quite damaging information about who was training them, who was arming them, who was equipping them, not just incriminating the British government, but also these people, if they were arrested, they could incriminate the American government, the French government, and the Turkish government. Now, Turkey is a staunch strategic friend and ally to Britain, and Turkey has played a critical role in the conflict in Syria.
Britain are serious about stopping terrorists, but they're not serious about stopping the war. And the problem is you can't separate both of them. If at the beginning of the conflict in Syria, the British government actively and publicly and strongly supported the opposition and supported the militants against Assad regime, and which sent the wrong message to the British Muslims here that the government supports this movement, and a lot of them have joined that conflict. And then politics changed. They came back, and Britain has changed its official stand. And these people were wronged. At the end of the day, these people were encouraged by the British government.
France is still on maximum terror alert following the Paris attacks in November 2015. Has bombing Syria made Britain and France more or less safe, and why? We put that to the public.
I will say less safe, because for the Syrian people, we are kind of involved in the destruction in the country. And it's quite amazing how we refuse to take refugees in when we destroy the country. If they wanted the president Assad el-Assad, if they wanted, they could have dealt with it by themselves. We mix in older people, country and politics, and we are surprised that it come back to us. I'm not surprised.
I don't think it's made it any different. You know, you're roughly the same age as me. You lived through the IRA and other people that have been doing it, so no, it can't be a safer place. And I don't think what they're doing has, I don't know. I just think it's like idiots run amok. I mean, what they've done in Syria and the fact they've demolished practically most of Syria's history is horrendous. But anyway, that's it.
It's a bit of 50-50. It depends on how you want to look at it. You can look at it as being safe as we're a country who like helping others and we're there. But then you can look at it as we're not safe as others might think that we might have caused it. It just depends on how you want to look at it.
It's a difficult one, really, because I suppose from the Syria's point of view, they probably feel as if it's helping them, but invariably there's going to be a backlash here. So, in a way, yeah, it has probably made it slightly more dangerous here.
We asked our experts to consider whether the Anglo-French bombing of Syria and Iraq has made Britain and France safer or more dangerous.
Well, let's be clear about it. The only effective military campaign in Syria being carried out by a foreign force is the Russian air campaign. There's no question about that. The American Air Force had been bombing, in quotation marks, ISIS in Syria for over a year, and had been an abject failure. In that time, ISIS had increased dramatically the amount of territory it controlled. As soon as the Russian air campaign began in Syria in September 2015, it was so devastating, it was so effective that ISIS's rule in Syria has started to crumble. Now, of course, Britain voted last year to take part in the American air campaign in Syria, but let's be realistic about it. That was simply a show of political support to the Americans by Britain, a show of moral support to the Americans by Britain. Britain has about 4 or 6 aircraft taking part in the raids in Syria. That is completely ineffective. It's almost laughable. So I don't think we can say that the British or French or American air campaign has made their countries more susceptible to terrorism. What I would say is that the support that the Americans and the British and the French have given to terrorist groups in Syria has made their countries vulnerable to terrorists.
Absolutely not. Less safe, of course. We have seen this before, and we have seen it numerous times. Bombing people and drones and missiles on civilians and on innocent cities never solved the problem. They've done that, and they still do that in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq. It never solves the issue. The more you show people violence and aggressiveness, they are going to retaliate. You can't control their reaction. You can't assume that you can go with your warplanes and drop bombs on them and that they won't retaliate or they won't try to retaliate, whether you agree with the way they retaliate or not. There's a cause and effect. So violence has never solved the issue. Violence has never made anyone safer. I think to make people safe here, you have to make people safe there.
Revelations that ISIL is plotting and targeting football fans ahead of Euro 2016 indicates Europe's bombing of Syria has not helped make EU citizens safer. It also shows European authorities cannot fully protect civilians. Let's hope we're wrong. But if something happens at Euro 2016, nobody can say we weren't warned that military action in Syria and Iraq could lead to a deadly and violent reaction in Britain and France.